Hi, my name's Suzanne Kane, and I'm a sculptor from Las Cruces, New Mexico. I have been working with sculpture since I was a kid, and I did a Bachelor of Fine Arts in sculpture from Michigan State years ago. And the most interesting thing to you guys might be that I also have my teaching credentials for K-12, and I can't imagine what you guys are going through with COVID. It is such a wonderful field to be in the arts and be sharing that hands-on experience. And how crazy is this that we're cut off? So I don't pretend to know what you're going through, but I do think about you often. And I give a good shout out to my great art educators here in Doña Ana County, which is your southernmost county in New Mexico. And after I did my bachelor's degree, I taught K-12. My most experience is with K through middle school years and some high school. And then I was able to work in I was self-employed with a little ceramic business for about 10 years after I did that. And then I was able to go back and do my Master's of Fine Arts here in New Mexico. And that's when I've really concentrated on being a full-time studio artist. I did my work in ceramics when I did my master's. And my favorite thing to do is to combine both ceramics with a sculptural material like steel is what I work with mainly now. So a lot of metal work in my background. So the steel work is very fun to integrate with the ceramics. Yeah, I think you can see my website up here. And excuse me, you can see that currently I'm working a lot with plant forms. We are the Chihuahua Desert down south here, which is a wonderful claim to fame for New Mexico. It is our largest desert region in the North America, and it is underrepresented, I think. So that's something I always talk about is the Chihuahua Desert. And I work with things that can be functional, but sculptural for interior work. And then I also, in the past 10 years, have really tried to explore the idea of exterior work, which I still think of as that I'm working with plant forms, just simplifying and editing, and a lot more steel, and still the ceramics are involved. So what shall we look at first? Let's see. So the plants, obviously plants, and they're obviously that kind of puzzling together of the ceramic and steel. And I'm going to switch you over. I made special for this particular presentation a page on my website that's specifically for the Chihuahua Desert, which is my inspiration currently. And it is, let's just take a look at this. Because when I first moved here, I just saw nothingness, khaki, dirt, desert. And it took me quite a little while to adapt and really open my eyes. And I sort of ended up loving that process where you can see something and it's not that first look that will give you your whole picture or your whole information. So I now go for a hike at least once a week in the desert. And there's wonderful, unique structures that are so different from the Michigan that I grew up in. And there are beautiful seed pods that just get dropped down into the dirt and pop up someday as a plant. It's very magical. There's wonderful colors that are a surprise in the khaki wasteland that I used to think of. Oddball structures that look very lacy and light and delicate from a distance. But if you happen to want to reach out, I have that tendency to want to reach out and touch. And so you reach out and touch, and they are hard, and they are dangerous, and they are scratchy and ouchy and really tough. So this is a choya that has those wonderful little pods on it that you'll see me work with quite a little bit in my structures. And my friend put this wonderful horny toad in there. Isn't it great? The texture. Oh my goodness. So I was thinking about you as art educators, and I was thinking, how could they look at my work or even the desert and get inspired by, say, working with color theory and working with all those tones of green and how to mix, 15, 18, 25 different tones of green for a piece. I thought that would be kind of cool. Or working with the structures in the desert and the surprise that it can offer to create some kind of a narrative piece. And, if we go back to my work, all about me here, we see these pieces, and I don't pretend to think that it would be easy in any way to use my work as some kind of inspiration and then have your students work with it. But I was thinking the puzzling that I do, I always make parts. So I always work modular, which is a nightmare for a teacher. I know that. And I was thinking that, they could work with small pieces, and they could maybe they could make a little pinch pot first. And in the pinch pot would be all their little piece parts that they could put together later. So if you look at something like this, I weld that steel base down there, and I try to get that movement and that lift. I like the steel because in ceramics, you can't quite get that airy, open feeling. It's with those skinny lines of steel, you really get a lot more light and space, which is a big deal for me. And then these structures are each individual ceramic leaf forms. And then each one of these little things is a little pod. And then those little sticky out points are each a little pod sticking out of that. So it's multiple parts. This is a piece that just has, one singular base. So this leaf form down here is a structure. I make those leaf forms with a press mold, actually, so I can make a 2-part puffed together leaf form and then bring those lines out. The individual flowers are what I was thinking would be fun to think of for kids of all ages work. And what I'm really concentrating on in something like this are, for me, they're fun. They loosen up my brain. They're fairly quick. And I can explore that idea of how weird is weird. How weird can I go? We all know what a flower with petals would look like, but what about those oddball structures in the desert, and how many different tiers do they have, or how many different seed pods do they have that poof out and create a floral look, and they're really just seed pods clustered together. And I just, sometimes it helps me stretch myself more. And so these are, of course, you couldn't really do these stems because they're, it's a welded stem, so it comes up and it has joiners on it, which is hard. But you could get a singular stem, have some kind of a form that sticks onto the end of like a bamboo skewer, and then have little things that stick off of it or little things that go into it like this. I use these big fat blocks on the bottom for the weight, and you'd have to have that stick, you kind of have to have that stick sticking down in there. So this is, you can see right away that I think I'm always thinking about how to teach too. I miss it. I miss it a lot. I don't teach anymore. I taught for 10 years, K-12, and then I did my little the production business work, and then when I did studio art entirely these last 10 years, actually 20, it's getting closer to 20 years now, I did teach at the university level. So I've been adjunct in the ceramics department at NMSU and at UTEP. And it's really wonderful for the brain to be able to teach and try to figure out how to impart that knowledge. So I'm moving along because some of you might be interested in the exterior work. I liked setting up this piece in particular in that desert garden because then it has that direct correlation to what I'm thinking it is, that I'm thinking it is a plant structure that's popping out of the desert. And I call this xeriscape globe. A lot of my pieces are called xeriscape because, as many of you probably know, xeriscaping is the low water usage plantings. So this is a bigger steel structure, so I'm getting a little more geometric. And then these pods are bolted onto that surface. And this piece is about 5 feet tall. It's not huge. It nestles down in among the cactus very nicely. And these pieces I don't know how to get closer on that, but this I consider a xeriscape piece as well. And these little floret shapes that I have coming out of the steel structure, I think of as, people look at them as flowers, but I think of them as seed pods, like you'd see a seed pod dry and sort of crack open, which I think is crazy magical that something can look so dry and dead, and then the next second, it somehow they're propagating, they're building more plants, even from that dry little husk shape that just cracks open. And I have, let's go to, some of my exterior work is very edited down. So this, you can really see that structure of the steel, the geometry of it, and you can really see those round pods. I think of them as little pods on there. A lot of people think they're little bells, like you'd see a bell in a firehouse, kind of a bell or something. So everybody's always taking a rock and clanging against those little round pods right there. And they're really high fire ceramic. And again, they're just bolted onto that steel tower structure that you see. So here again, this is probably my most edited work that I have, and it's for the exterior, but you can see that I'm very interested in that combining of the geometry and the organic, as well as getting a lot of space lifted into the piece. So let's see if I can get out of this one. And what else? I do some things for very practical reasons. This was a commission to just plasma cut these patterned steel doors on the downtown Las Cruces plaza. It's an electrical building. So there's proposals out there available to apply to, and sometimes you can just give them your idea and figure out how to make it later. It's some places will work with that, and some people have had very good luck with that sort of thing. But this was a fun thing to do for me. I'm an experiential learner, so I sort of had to learn how can I work this pattern in CAD? How can I get these plasma cut? How can I get these powder coated? And oh, by the way, how can I carry them to this place and bolt them onto the wall? It's always a learning experience. So this is at a piece at Eastern New Mexico University in Portales. And I call this Tall Drink of Water. And she's about 8 feet tall. She looks a little diminutive there. But again, that kind of geometric pattern with the pods, giving it sort of body and texture, and of course color. I guess I should talk about color because I really am interested in, bringing in those pops of color throughout this. So let's see. I'm not even sure how my time is, but I have done things beyond this plant inspiration. And we could take a look for a minute back on these 20 years that I've been working as a studio artist. These are some archived pieces that are some are 7 years old, some are 12 years old. And I've had some very popular series of work. I move forward. I don't tend to look back too much. I do have some pieces that people say, why don't you do those chairs with birds? And, you make the chairs with birds and then you're done with the chairs with birds. When I first graduated with my MFA, I was very interested in domestication and the idea of that there's a lot of things that we take for granted in life, and domestic work is one of those things that everybody has to do the chores or have somebody to do them for them. And there's a whole lot of our life that is filled with domestication, and we might take it for granted. So I did a lot of kind of house forms. And here again, you see the textural thing that I'm so interested in. And the house forms sort of morphed into these like chambers that you could open up and they would have something kind of precious inside of them. And it almost looks altar-like or tabernacle-like in some ways when they get to be those hinged things that can open up. Great. So you can see, especially if you're maneuvering around my website, you can see my work that I'm currently working on. You can see a little bit about me. And there's a little interview with KRWG here that actually shows me working and shows my process. Please feel free to contact me. This is www.suzannekane.com. And you can look through archived pieces. And please, my beautiful Chihuahua Desert, please look at these pictures and enjoy them. And I think that I'll just keep adding to this because they're fun textures, colors, and it really brings forward one of those things that we can all take for granted. That dry, dusty desert really has a lot to it. And thank you very much for your interest in my work.